So they thought you were eBay?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because
I know you're a popular guy, but yeah. How odd. It's random.
I am not eBay. Do not call me anymore.
And do you actually call eBay?
No, I get calls for Bank of America constantly.
Really?
Yeah, somewhere my phone number for my business is published as Bank of America's phone number or something. I used to get Mercedes-Benz.
Well, at least it's high-end
These
products.
are not plugs for those companies.
No, but you got high-end products, so that's good.
Yeah. Dudes to Dads is a podcast to help men understand and navigate the transition of being a single dude into a family man. How do we make sense of it all? Well, we probably won't be able to, but let's go ahead and have some fun trying. Okay, welcome guys. We're back. Alan, how are you?
Well, how are you?
I'm good. Did you actually see that there was a television camera here when you walked in?
I did. That was pretty impressive. What is going on with
I
that?
actually got interviewed for the local news for the meetup group. I don't know exactly when it's going to air, or if it does, because you never know with these things.
Right.
But it was pretty cool. They were interested in the meetup group and sort of the mission and sort of what we're trying to do here.
Well, how did they get a hold of you? Through
I can't give my secrets
podcast at dudesadads.com.
No, how do they get it? Or
I don't know. I mean, that's weird that they just...
I actually did a little bit of outreach to some local news people.
Yeah.
And one of them responded because he's a dad.
That's awesome.
And said, hey, wow, that looks like a really cool thing. We had some phone conversations and he was interested in doing it. So
that's really cool.
So they sent a camera out here and just did a little bit of a short interview. Now, it may not air. Who knows?
Yeah.
But if it does, I'll be sure to put it up on the website.
Well, I was overhearing as you were doing it, and you sounded very professional. And he said
thanks.
You only needed like one take or something like that.
He's like, do you do this? It's like, well, kind of. I don't do it on video. I'm an amateur podcaster.
Right. There we go.
So, yeah. So, other good news too. We actually have international listeners. I don't know if you saw this, but you did.
The stats,
Yeah. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, but podcasts, you can actually look at the statistics of the podcast, which, I don't necessarily keep refreshing every day. I just kind of look at it once in a while.
Right.
But I just took a look the other day and we had listeners from Canada, Austria, Nicaragua. That's pretty dang cool.
Yeah. When you see that stuff, it's really hard to believe that you can reach an audience that's beyond the local area that you're in.
Totally.
And all of a sudden you see that and you're like, wow, people in Nicaragua.
Well, I mean, this started locally. I mean, that was the idea, was a meetup. And,
Right.
The fact that we've now been able to do a podcast, it's, people, a broader audience.
Yeah.
That's the point. I mean, that's why we did this. But
yeah.
It's really cool to see that.
It's cool to see that. It is. It is.
So.
And it's taken those stats from all the podcatchers that are out there, basically iTunes, Stitcher. I plan on putting on a couple more. I think like TuneIn and one called Miro. They don't get a lot, but it might be worth putting them up there.
Yeah. So for those of you who can support the show, we'd really appreciate it. Probably one of the best ways is to go onto iTunes and find us, Dudes to Dads, and give us a review if you'd like us. 5 stars would be preferable.
Yep.
And then also subscribe. That helps boost our sort of viewership and people being able to see us.
The reviews and the subscriptions help a lot. And matter of fact, I believe there's a button on the dudesadads.com.
Correct.
So you can go straight there.
Yeah, if you're on the podcast page or whatever, you can just click on it and it'll take you right there. So you do have to have iTunes open, but okay. Well, cool. So let's get into it. This episode is about, I actually have a specific subject for this episode.
This is a themed episode.
Yeah, it's a themed episode because it was really, really strong. Over the last week, this has sort of come into my life in a couple different manners or ways.
Okay.
And it's the idea of empathy.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of that term because a lot of people forget they can be sympathetic, but not necessarily empathetic.
Right.
And that's just one thing I stress.
So, and to define it, I'll just, so people understand exactly if you're not familiar with it, it's the ability to understand and share the feelings of another.
Yeah.
So I've talked in the past, I've gone through these classes and sort of putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and that kind of thing. But there's some things that have happened, like, and I'll share a couple different things that had happened over the course of this last week. And I was like, wow, this would be great for the podcast. So, I mean, whether it's your kids, your spouse, spouse or girlfriend, work, whatever it is, empathy really applies to everyone, and it really enhances your life. And that's, I think, what we're going to do as a theme for today.
Yeah.
So, various things that we're going to talk about are going to be empathy.
Yeah. It applies to like how you feel with the people that are around you and how you relate to them. And actually, that's the thing. Like if you feel and understand how a person thinks, maybe I'm jumping the gun a bit, but but if you understand how a person feels, then you're going to be able to understand how to react to them.
Exactly.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And that's what we're going to talk about. So we're going to touch on a couple of those things. I've got a couple things planned. In fact, let me just do a little bit of rundown of what we're going to talk about today. Because remember, I always forget to do that.
Yeah, right. Okay, so, good catch.
We have SuperCharge, which we're going to talk about a book that I've recently came across. It was read in a class that I took. And then I just purchased it for my kids, and I love it, and they love it.
Cool.
So I'm going to share that in the SuperCharge. We've got the battlefield, and it will relate to empathy. It's
love thy enemy.
Yeah, just some things that a common battle that happens with your kids. We're going to jump into Light Her Fire. It's going to deal with empathy as well, and it's sort of a very, very direct way. Dr. Ellen's going to tell us exactly how she feels about it.
Cool.
Got some homework. What do you think? Probably going to be about empathy. I don't know. Theme of the day. And I have a quote of the day, and we'll go into the quote of the day. Which, guess what?
Will be about kangaroos.
Yes, absolutely. Empathy, and it's by Stephen Covey, and he actually talks about empathy.
Cool.
So let's get started. First is SuperCharge. So for SuperCharge, this actually is not about empathy, but it was so good that I had to include it in this episode.
Tease.
Total tease. And it's a book by a gentleman, Max Lucado. I hope I'm saying that right.
Max.
Max that was here earlier. No, different guy.
Different Max.
The last name is spelled Lucado, and I think he's written many books. Okay. Now, I didn't necessarily think of this too much in a religious way, but I think there is some religious connotations, and so that wasn't necessarily my motivation. For those who may have certain beliefs or whatever, that's not what this was about.
Yeah.
But it does have some religious aspects to it, and I didn't realize that sort of till after.
Yeah. Well, you can still learn from.
But the theme was awesome, and so I took a course that I had spoke about in some previous things. It was sort of a personal development course, and they read this there, and I was like, "Whoa, this is so good." So I bought it, got it on Amazon, and read it to my kids the last couple of days every night, and explaining it. They're still young, but sort of explaining the meaning and trying to get it across. It's going to take a while to get it.
Sure, sure.
But this is what it was about. So this is kind of the little blurb. I'll just read it. It's a little bit easier to read it than for me to explain it. But so You Are Special is what the book is called. It tells the story of Punchinello, the wooden Wemmick. The inhabitants of Wemmicksville spend their days placing stickers on each other. Golden star stickers are put on the talented, smart, and attractive Wemmicks. Gray dot stickers are for those who make mistakes and don't stand out. Punchinello, despite his best efforts to get stars from other Wemmicks, is covered in gray dots and begins to believe he'll never be worth anything. Then one day he visits Eli the woodcarver, his creator, and everything changes. The story reminds us of just how wonderful we are.
How interesting. This sounds like a combination of the old psychology experiment that I don't know if people are familiar with, but I was a psych major in college. And they basically told the people that had a certain color eye that they were better.
Right.
And then they reversed it and did the same thing. And did,
right.
Well, they called me brown eye. Oh, well, why? Would that hurt your feelings? They're all the same kid ethnicity and everything. And it was just that they for whatever reason they said, okay, if you have this, you're okay, and if you don't have this, you're not as good.
So what happens in the story, because people are going to read it, and that's cool. So I can kind of say what happens is, so this wooden character Punchinello meets a girl, Lucia, who doesn't have any stars or dots.
Okay.
And he's like, what the heck? Like everybody in Wemmickville has dots and stars, and she says, well, it doesn't mean anything to me what people think and what people say.
Gotcha.
And so the dots don't stick, and but at the same time, the stars don't stick.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It was a little difficult to explain this to a child, but basically it's that same theme that I had before. Like imagine if we can teach our children that what other people are saying doesn't really matter, and especially in the negative. Although, the positive too, you have to sort of take them both.
Yeah.
Saying, it's great that someone's going to give you praise, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter.
I had a friend, I still have a friend. I don't know if she's listening, but like basically she was told as kind of early on not to rely on her looks. And she's very beautiful now, older, but she's got this really down to earth sense. And one time I just kind of came out and asked her, I said, why do you think the way you think right now? And she said, my looks were very downplayed when I was a kid because my parents didn't want me to take it and run with it.
Well, we've said on the previous episodes, remember I talked about what's on the inside about to my daughter and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I know I'm beautiful on the inside, but what
about my dress? Like? Is my dress actually pretty?
I can't flip me inside out, Dad.
Yeah, and so, but it's that same theme that it's so powerful. Now, of course, Eli the woodcarver ends up being God, which that was where the connection. I wasn't taking that part of it, but ultimately just saying, hey, we are wonderful the way that we are, regardless of what somebody says or does or whatever. And we're always trying to please. We're always trying, or vice versa, or people are mean and they'll say things, and as a result, our emotion is affected by that.
Yeah.
And so it's a very, very powerful story. And so in the end, Punchinello realizes how much he's loved for just who he is. And one of his dots falls off.
Oh, so
it begins to fall off.
Foreshadowing that he's going to become like the girl.
Right.
It's interesting. The wood carver I thought it'd be something like that, but I was hoping it wouldn't go on this like plastic surgery route, like carve him into something different.
No, but he says, he says like, how do you know me? Punchinello's like, how do you know me? He's like, well, because I created you.
Right.
And he says, I love you, because of who you are. It has nothing to do whether you were able to jump over this or accomplish this or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's a really, really special. And so what I'm trying to get with my kids is saying, listen, it's kind of like how us as parents feels like we quote created you.
Yeah, right.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you do something positive or negative.
Yeah.
I'm still going to love you. And it's funny because the positive people don't think about that because there's this whole thing about positive reinforcement and all this. But I'm kind of conscious not to do that either. It's like when they accomplish something, we've talked about this. It's not, wow, I'm so proud that you did this. And that's why you don't make that. It's like, hey, how did he feel about that? You probably should feel pretty good about that you just did that.
Right.
You're making them feel good inside.
Yeah.
Rather than it coming from you and that praise.
Right.
So,
where they rely on that 100% of the time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a cool book. It's not very long. It's, there's short abridged versions as well. Mm-hmm. But I'll put a link on the website as well. You can click on it, or you can go to Amazon and purchase it.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Yeah. So it's called You Are Special by Max Lucado. So, and definitely any feedback that you guys have, make sure to email us podcast@dudestodads.com.
Right.
We also are on Twitter at Dudes to Dads. Mm-hmm. We're at let's see, Facebook. Fax Machine.
We have Fax Machine. Fax. Dial Dudes to Dads. 1-800 Dudes to Dads.
We're on a dial-up modem. Coming to you live from a 2600 modem.
Yeah, exactly. It'll take 4 years to download the episode.
Right. So, anyways, let's go. Let's move on, and we're gonna get back into empathy on the battlefield. So getting back to empathy on the battlefield, there's a very common battle. I call this a battle. It's like a child is either scared, worried, has some kind of negative feelings towards something, and they come to us. And we try to tell them that it's going to be okay.
Right.
This is very common. This happens all the time. I do it. Everybody does it.
Yeah.
I was just talking to, a friend about it, and they just did the same thing. And so let me give you an example. It's easier to illustrate it. So, it could be at night. Let's say your child comes into your room and is saying, hey, I'm scared. There's monsters in my room. Something like that. And our typical response is, hey, listen, there's not monsters in your room. Everything's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. Just go back to sleep.
I sprayed for monsters yesterday.
There's a light down the hall. You can see whatever. Don't worry about it. That's a common thing, to try to ease the child's fears that there's no monsters.
Right.
The way of being empathetic would be like, whoa, thinking in your head, like, first of all, I'm a 5-year-old kid who's thinking there's monsters or whatever, and really trying to be empathetic towards that and saying, wow, you know what? If I was thinking there was monsters, I would probably be pretty scared too. Sleep is it sleeping alone that you're scared of? And you sort of start talking to them and understanding where they're coming from, versus giving them the advice and saying, hey, it's going to be okay, because that's not what they want to hear.
Right.
The child's sitting there like, hey, I'm scared. Like,
I don't know what to do.
I just want someone to understand me. And so that is really what the empathy is about, when it comes to that. So and a child will battle because you're like, hey, no, just be, and they're like, no, I'm scared, blah, 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 and they'll continue to go on, and that's the battle. And you're sitting there trying to convince the 4-year-old, 5-year-old, whatever, that it's going to be okay, and they don't care.
Yeah,
that's not what they care about.
Right.
They want someone to just say, hey, I get it. I understand what you're talking about. I'd be scared too.
Yeah.
Hey, what can we do about this?
You think about that in your adult life when you're talking to your friends. I mean, 9 times out of 10, you don't want like someone to force advice on your throat.
Oh, we're going to talk about that in one of the other segments.
Foreshadowing.
Yes. See, I'm good. See, so for those of you who don't know, Alan doesn't know what's coming up next. I like to surprise him. So I'll prepare a lot of the stuff, and I'll say, hey, Alan, do you want to discuss it? He goes, no, I want to be surprised. So when you're surprised sometimes because you foreshadow, you've been doing this long enough.
Yeah, exactly. I have predictability. Totally I have a lot of empathy.
Yeah, and another example, like, because this is a real one too, is, a child comes home from school, maybe, first grader, second grader, whatever.
Yeah.
And just saying how horrible the day was, like crying, like literally. And I've had this happen with my kids. And I'm like, what's going on? What happened? This is the worst. The child saying like, this is the worst day ever. Yeah. And you're thinking like, whoa, like what
ever
happened?
So far.
Yeah. Like, you're thinking like, what happened? Like, did you lose an arm? Like, like nobody played with me at lunchtime.
Yeah.
Like that's what the kid says.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there just thinking to yourself, like, really? Like, there's so many things that could be a problem. And,
I know.
And you may
not push you over right now, and the day would get a lot worse.
Yeah, I mean, and you wouldn't say that.
Of course.
If anything, you say, you know what? Hey, it's okay. Like, you just got to try to make new friends, and you got to, try to do that. Whatever.
Yeah.
You're once again. Yeah. Giving them the adult advice of saying, listen, I know what to do. You have to make new friends.
Back when I was a kid.
Yeah. Meanwhile, this child is crying.
Yeah.
They're 5 years old and they are emotional about the fact of feeling lonely or whatever. So now, the empathetic response and the response that's actually going to get your child to probably feel a little better about it is to say, you know what? Wow. I mean, if I could see if I was at lunch and nobody wanted to sit with me that would be disappointing.
Right. And especially
I would feel like I just want to crawl up in a hole or something,
And that lasts throughout your entire peer years.
Well, and we say that. We say, you know what? That happened to me. Like that's not what they want to hear.
Right.
They want you to just listen to them and agree with them. And that's all empathy really is.
Sure.
It's just agreeing with the person and saying, yeah, I could see why you're
relate
upset.
To them, genuinely relate.
Yeah, like I could see. Well, as a parent, you might even not. You have to put in our world, you're sitting alone at lunch. It's like, big deal. Go make some new friends. I mean, that's kind of our thought process. Let's be real about it. And especially in a situation where you think like the kid's being a wimp or or too emotional or something, and we're judgmental about it. Yeah. And instead of looking at it and going, wow, this kid is actually really upset about this. Like in their little world, this is a huge deal.
Well, and the thing is, like, I think empathy also, you can have empathy without necessarily understanding exactly what they're going through. Because I know I can have empathy for, say, a drug user.
Right.
I don't know what the drugs feel like. I've never done them. Right. That being said, I can empathize if someone has a problem with addiction or problem with certain things. I can sit there and go.
You empathize without judging.
Without judging. And saying, I can relate to your feeling of loneliness and feeling of these things based off of my experiences. I can't relate to the drug thing, but I can relate to how you feel.
But even if you can't relate, it's really just listening to the person.
Sure.
Like, I mean, it really, you don't have to even relate or understand
it. Well, there's got to be a genuine feeling that comes from it. And I think that's where empathy comes from, is that you genuinely are concerned and you're trying to understand.
But that's a switch you have to make, and that doesn't happen right away.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, especially with a child, it's like, because you're thinking in your world, it's like, wow, if this was me, like I would just go find a new friend. Like, okay, who cares if these 3 kids?
That friend and pull them to your desk.
Yeah, I mean, and that would be my response, honestly, most of the time would be like, hey, well, you know what? I mean, I'd say, wow, that does suck, or something like that. I said, maybe you just want to find some new friends and do that, instead of just saying like, wow, that probably does feel really lonely, to not have that, and then maybe ask him, say, would you do anything different, or, kind of making, or you don't even have to have the solution.
Yeah.
That's the problem, is like, we always think we have to solve it. We don't.
Yeah.
They just want you to listen.
They need a pat on the back saying things are going to be okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's, for the battlefield, I think ultimately it's with your kids, it's that same thing of empathy. And I think, we'll keep that theme going.
Sure.
Let's do that with Light Her Fire. So with this clip of Light Her Fire, it's kind of the same thing we were just talking about with the child, except it's with our spouse, or girlfriend or significant other, or whatever.
Yeah.
Is all we need to do is actually listen. You know, and this is often with men, when a woman just wants to talk and just wants us to listen, but we have to offer a solution.
Right.
So it's a quick clip, but it's to the point. So let's hear this.
Cool.
So here's what's important to remember. Every single time somebody comes to you describing a situation, telling you what they've gone through, or relating a story, if you haven't heard the words, "I need your help, I need your opinion, can you please help me sort this out or help me solve this problem?" they don't want your advice. They don't want your help, and they certainly don't want your opinion. What they want is for you to understand how they are feeling. And believe me when I tell you, this is a very difficult job because most of us want to give advice.
So we do this all the time. And I'm including myself, is, you know, we do this with our significant other all the time. It's like we try to give them advice.
Yeah.
Our intention is good.
Yep.
Total good intention because we're trying to help.
Sure.
But they don't want it.
Yeah, not in every case. I think most people will preface, say, "Hey, what do you think I should do in this situation?"
Right, like she said. She said, if they're not asking the actual words, what would you do?
Yeah, what would you do?
How would you do this?
And keep your mouth shut.
Right. And that's hard.
It's
a hard one.
And I know there's been times where I feel like I need to kind of I stifle myself because I'm like, don't cram advice down their throat, or don't argue with a point. Like, even in an argument, I've learned to just kind of back off of arguments if they're going at me at a certain way. I'm like, what's the real problem here?
Right.
Like, it's not me. And I had to learn that. I mean, that takes time and patience, because that is not something you learn in your teens and 20s, right? And
I've learned this one over time.
Yeah,
I would say this. I think I'm better at this because of the Light Her Fire programs and my mom's teachings and stuff. With my wife than I definitely am with my kids.
Oh, okay.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, the idea of empathy, I've learned, okay, a woman doesn't want me to say anything, and just listen. Like I talk to myself and say, okay, she's telling me a story now. I'm just listening and saying, or something at work, and I say, oh yeah, no, I get it.
No, that makes sense because you see your significant other as an equal, a kind of a parallel person, whereas your kids, you're like, I
need to give them advice.
Give them advice. I got to teach them everything. So I totally get that, but I totally understand that other counter view of saying, let me just relate to them on their level and what's going on, and then try to empathize with them.
Right.
It's so funny.
Right. And you can do this at work too. I mean, this is not, this is not something. I mean, and I think more personal conversations at work per se.
Sure.
Where somebody is coming to you and saying, oh man, my weekend was just horrible. This happened, whatever. And we often try to relate.
Yeah.
Or, and I do that too. I tell stories, I do whatever to try to relate to somebody. It's like, just shut up and listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, it's like, and it's just, I think kids are often much better at that. Actually, Dr. Ellen has a story on the CD about, a child that just sat with their grandparent when their grandparent was upset. And the parent had said, like, what are you doing? Just, don't bother them. And he's like, I was just helping them cry.
Yeah.
By just sitting there quiet.
Sure.
And that kind of idea that a child knows, it's like, I'm not trying to solve their problem. I'm just hanging out with them.
Right.
And your friend, that's something when you see people, or you hear about, someone has a death in their family.
Yeah.
Or, they get divorced, or some major thing happens.
Yeah.
That's a thing. That's a time of empathy where you really, the only thing you can do is just be there.
Yeah, listen and maybe give little pointers here and there if they're asking for it.
But that's the thing, is we all want to help.
Right.
You don't want to give the pointer.
My thing is, I know for a fact, I most of the time have the answer to the thing and problem I'm perplexing, right? I might be brooding over something. Oh man, I really want to do this, or this is really horrible at this job, or whatever it is. But I have the answer. I'm just trying to get it out and put it in the ether that someone understands me and just wants to pat me on the back.
Sometimes it's an ego thing. I know with, I definitely am guilty of that, where we say, well, I know the answer, or I know how to help you. And, I do a lot of the dad stuff. I have the meetup or whatever. So someone comes to me with some issue, I'm immediately thinking, okay, how can I help them?
Well, no,
how
I
can
mean,
solve
I'm
them?
talking about I have the answer to my own problem, the problem that I'm actually perplexing. You know what I mean? I know it. And like, if you should go down the street and go to get the taco. I know I need to go get the taco. Don't worry about it. I just want to figure out how to get there, and I'm just complaining because I need to complain about this moment, right this moment. You know, I don't do it very often. Just listen to me. And I have friends that actually, I had a friend that a long time ago, like when we were in our 20s, we were emailing each other, and he goes, "Yes, it sucks when people try to force it down your throat. It's like you just want them to pat on your back and say, I too think that sucks." You know? That's all you have to do.
Right.
That's all you have to do. You're my best friend at that moment.
Right.
You know. So,
right. No,
yeah.
I mean, we don't want answers. I mean, it's like, I think about that with, my parents growing up.
Yeah.
And there's a story actually on the CD as well, on that same CD with Dr. Ellen's, is she actually talks about a story when I was a kid.
Oh, how
and
funny.
So it was funny because I'm re-listening to the program
that was
again.
me.
I haven't listened to it in a couple of years. And I'm re-listening to it, and that exact thing happened where there was a situation where I came home from school and something, and she gave the right response.
Yeah.
She said, "Wow, that's really horrible," and and that was kind of where I gave that that examples from. It's like it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So it's just something, the idea of empathy, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. You don't have to agree.
Exactly.
You don't have to think that's a big deal. You don't have to nothing.
Yeah.
You don't, and that's the idea. It's we belittle it, we make less of it, or we try to, we have good intentions and we try to say, oh, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
It'll be okay. You'll be fine.
I know. It used to bug me when people try to force their ideals on me or like solutions. And I'm like, I've already thought about this.
And they're trying to help.
And they're trying to help, and I get it. Then I have to empathize with them.
Right. Right. All right. So we're good with that.
Yeah.
Let's do some dad's homework. So speaking on empathy, for dad's homework, what we're going to do is for 1 week, do not give advice or instruction unless asked. This is at home or at work.
Right.
So in other words, unless someone's asking you for help, just repeat back what they said and empathize how it probably feels.
Yeah. Makes sense.
For a whole week. Do you think you can do it?
Oh, totally.
I
don't care what people do.
It's going to be hard for me.
No.
I can do it. Reality is I got to challenge myself on this one.
Yeah.
It's not easy for me, being honest.
Yeah.
It's just because it's a habit, like I said,
Yeah.
with my kids especially.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, that's where I'm going to focus is, the idea of my kids coming to me with some issue, and big or small.
Yeah.
It's still an issue that they have. And it's like, oh, wow. Oh, in fact, good story is, this was last night. My son woke us up in the middle of the night. He was thirsty.
Okay.
And usually we're just like, just go get a drink. And he's like, well, I need a cup. It's like, you can't use your hand in the faucet or whatever, and it's downstairs and it's totally dark downstairs.
Yeah,
It's not, he's young still. And it's midnight, and we're like groggy or whatever. And I think my wife was still sleeping, and I'm usually the one sleeping. I usually don't get up.
Yeah.
But I was up all of a sudden, and I could see he was really frustrated. And I said, well, what do you need? And he said, well, I need a cup. And I said, okay, well, go downstairs and get one. He's like, well, no, it's so dark. And I'm like, thinking in my mind, my first thought is, seriously? Like, it's dark? Like, that's why you're not going to go down there? And then I immediately clicked in before I said anything. Yeah. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? He's scared of that.
Yeah.
So I said, you know
Dark
what?
is scared
I said, you know what, bud? Let me go get a cup for you.
Yeah.
I'll turn on the light. We'll go get a cup. So we both walked down. I turned on the light. He got a cup. Went to sleep.
Yeah.
But it was funny because I literally was tested with that just last night. I remember that. I totally forgot about that story.
That's funny.
But because I've had this week of empathy.
Yeah.
That's been the subject matter.
Yeah.
When I'm learning something new or I have a focus for the podcast or whatever. Sure. It's like, I see how many times a day this happens.
Yeah, when you start paying attention to it.
You do.
Yeah.
You start paying attention. It happens all the time. So yeah, I totally forgotten about that.
That's funny.
So we're going to close out the show like we often do with a quote of the day from the famous Stephen Covey. Okay. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Oh, that's that guy. I knew it looked familiar and I didn't know why.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah.
So here's the quote. When you show deep empathy towards others, their defense energy goes down and positive energy replaces it. That's when you can get more creative in solving problems.
Yeah.
I dig it.
Totally makes
dig
sense.
It.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You're in a situation where somebody's telling you something and all of a sudden you empathize.
Yeah.
Guards down, You can solve it, whether it's going to be an argument, whatever.
Yep.
You're not giving advice. You're not telling them what to do.
I know I clam up when someone's trying to cram advice down my throat.
Right.
Yeah, and not to say that I understand their intention. I'm like, okay. And then I just, thank you. And I just leave it at that.
Right.
And that's so problem solved, apparently.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, I'll go talk to the person who actually does empathize with me.
Sure.
So.
Well, I think we were, that was, pretty thorough on empathy. I think we've covered a lot.
Yeah.
Don't forget, if you have any questions, comments, feedback, reach us at podcast@dudestodads.com.
Yep.
On Twitter, Dudes to Dads. We also have a Facebook page. We
go to dudestodads.com.
You could go to dudestodads.com, click on podcast.
Yeah.
You can go to iTunes and subscribe, as well as give us a review. That really helps us.
Absolutely.
What else?
Wherever you want to find us, we probably have a Dudes to Dads somewhere.
Sure.
Right.
And if you're local in the San Diego area, certainly come to one of our meetups.
Oh, that'd be great.
You can just go to meetup.com.
Yeah,
and look for us.
If you came from the podcast to the meetup, that would be really interesting. Cool. Actually, let Jason know about that. Because
do you know what I'd love to do? And we haven't talked about this, but I'd love to be able to Skype people in or something.
Yeah, like do a live kind of radio recording.
Maybe we'll have to explore that.
There might be
You're going to be in charge
of
that one.
There'll be a way to do it. I know technologically there is a way.
Of course. No, you can Skype them in we can do a Google Hangout.
A Google Hangout. Yeah,
that's true.
Just got to record it.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, with that, I guess we're going to see you next week.
Yes.
And it's another show.
All right.
Take care, guys.
Take care. See you.